Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the University of Glasgow and particularly the Hunterian Museum for this historic occasion. And congratulations for getting through the freshers events out there. I hope you all got some Domino's pizza or a free shot, or at least an invite to a nightclub tonight. And if you are one of the freshers who have strayed into the Hunterian Museum, stay and listen to these speeches and have a look round. So a few words of welcome here, and then when we've had the speeches, we'll move upstairs for the unveiling of the plaque. So the university is really delighted that Scotland's role in the standardisation of the Ohm is being recognised today with by the IEEE, by the unveiling of this plaque. And it both recognises our legacy as the University of Glasgow as producing world changers and world-changing events and world-changing artefacts and world-changing standards that we're being recognised. And as a university, we continue to do that today, as evidenced by our wonderful freshers on University Avenue. So thank you very much for coming along to this. And events like these don't actually magically come together. They take a lot of hard work, and I know there are a lot of people in this room who put things together, but it'd be remiss of me not to say thank you to Peter Grant, professor from Edinburgh University, or an emeritus professor from Edinburgh University, for the absolute hard work he's done to actually make sure this application for a plaque has actually got through the rigorous process that has to be followed to ensure the University of Glasgow is worthy of having one of the plaques here in the Hunterian Museum. That's really all I'm going to say, because there are people who can say things rather better than me. I'm very interested myself because I am a lapsed engineer, if that's such a thing can happen. But I'm from the dark side of mechanical, so I'm sure I'll listen to this with interest. So I'll hand over to Mike, who's going to introduce the rest of our speakers. So Mike.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Hinchey. I'm the chair of the UK and Ireland section of IEEE. I'd like to welcome you all here. It's wonderful to be in Glasgow, a city synonymous with achievement in science and engineering as well as in culture. And I'd like to offer a special welcome to the IEEE President, Jose Moura, who's with us today, and also to members of the IEEE History Committee who are having a meeting here this week. In fact, we have a number of events. We have that meeting of the History Committee. We also have HistalCon, which is organised mostly by Tony Davis. And we also have the Western European young engineers and young professionals. And they will be meeting also at the end of this week. So it's quite an IEEE week this week. Thank you very much to the university and to the museum for hosting us. We are, of course, here to unveil the plaque recognising the standardisation of the Ohm as the unit of resistance. And as Neil just pointed out, it's a lot of work to get one of these plaques. And I'd like to recognise our Life Members Affinity Group for all the work that they've put into that, not just getting this plaque, but previous plaques and a number of more that are in the working. So thanks especially to Charles and Tony and Rod, and especially Charles. I think Charles really has been the leading light in getting this working. So I'd now like to ask Peter to give us a few words about standardisation of electrical units. So
Thank you, Mike. I'm very pleased that we've received approval from the IEEE History Committee for this event to recognise the standardisation of the Ohm as a unit of resistance. These activities were stimulated by the installation of undersea telegraphic cables in the 1860s, particularly across the Atlantic Ocean, that was led by William Thomson, later Lord Kelvin, Fleming Jenkin, and others. What happened was with these cables, the data rates was exceptionally low, and there was a lot of failures on the cable. And so Thomson persuaded in 1861 the British Association for the Advancement of Science to set up a committee on electrical standards. And this committee was asked to review the many early attempts at providing a standard for electrical resistance, because different standards have been proposed based on wire coils, And Werner von Siemens in Germany actually did it with a column of mercury, 1 meter long. One of the key experiments on the Ohm resistance was James Clerk Maxwell performed with Fleming Jenkin, the experimental verification of electrical resistance of a pair of wire coils at King's College in London in 1863. So all that information was fed into this the Committee on Electrical Standards, and they provided in 1865 the first widely recognised standard for electrical resistance, and they then distributed copies of these standards around the world. And on the front of your brochure, we have, courtesy of the Science Museum, the very first standard resistor, which was actually purchased by Michael Faraday. Fleming Jenkin wrote in the Philosophical Transactions that these standards were available for £2.10 or £2.50. But of course, in today's money, that would be very much more. The resistance unit was later named the Ohm after Georg Simon Ohm, the celebrated German physicist, because he did early pioneering work in this area of measuring the difference between voltage and current across various test pieces. I'm particularly grateful to the IE History Committee, and in particular Professor Antonio Savini, in assisting me in preparing the wording for the plaque, to the Hunterian for agreeing to the installation here in the museum, and to Professor Richard de la Rue from the University of Glasgow, who's assisted me greatly with these arrangements today and for the symposium that we'll be having at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for all the hard work you've put into this. It's greatly appreciated. Now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Robert Dent, who is the chair of the IEEE History Committee, and he'll explain to us a little bit about the process of getting the milestone plaque.
Okay, so fresh out of my mind, since we just came from the IEEE History Committee meeting, we were trying to discuss 11 proposals, and we weren't able to make it all the way through that. But I'd like to give you an idea of how difficult a task it is in order to get a milestone of IEEE, and I thank Peter very much for all of his work and all the help that he has gotten in preparing the proposal. But one of the things I wanted to mention is the advocate. We assign an advocate. Once the proposal comes in, we ask for advocates. It could be a member of the committee. It could be an associate member, which might be a past chair or a past member, and it might just be someone knowledgeable. And if we don't get one, we start to, twist a few arms in order to get an advocate, because the advocate has to really be the person that keeps on top of that milestone and makes sure that it is properly evaluated as well as it progresses through the entire system. And one of the most important things that we've added, in fact 2 years ago, that we must have at least 2 experts must be consulted, and those 2 experts must input their opinions on the significance of that contribution into the engineering, technology, and history wiki. So there are 15 total criteria. I'm not going to go through all of them. In general, we want to recognize an achievement, not necessarily just a person. In this case, how can you avoid Ohm when the unit of resistance is named after him? Also, is the place where the plaque is going to be, is it accessible to the public? Because we want to have the general public see them. One of the others is the plaque going to be physically supported because of the weight of the plaque? I think I can say, looking at the girders and the beams, I think we have a safe place here that can do it. And in addition, we have so many other criteria as to whether it was a contemporary achievement or a prior achievement. Is it significant or is it incremental? But as I look through them, the thing that we argue the most about is the citation's word length shall not exceed 70 words, the maximum that will fit on a plaque. 60 and 65 words are preferred for aesthetic reasons. Well, of course you know that electrical engineers, most of us has minors in language, and so therefore we spend a lot of our time making sure that the citation is clear and it will bring illumination to the general public, because when these plaques are seen by the general public, they have to be able to be understood by the general public, or, as I say, it's got to pass the Alice test. Alice is my wife. If she reads it and understands it, I think the History Committee has done their job, because her background is in art. It's not a technical background. So with that, I'd just like to say again that after that process is completed, the advocate makes a recommendation for it to come ahead of the History Committee. The History Committee discusses it, and if it's passed, it's then got to go to the IEEE Board of Directors, because that is the body that says this is an IEEE milestone, and it has to be said okay to that milestone, and that's what is being now dedicated today, and I congratulate you all. Thank you. There is one more thing that I want to give to Mike. It's a thank you letter from the IEEE History Committee with my signature, and thanking him for all of his support. And I've already given one to Peter, which maybe he will maybe show us a little later. I gave one to Peter for all of his effort in making sure that this is a success. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. Before we move upstairs for the unveiling, I'd like to introduce Steph Shelton, who's going to explain a little bit more to us.
Good afternoon. I'm Steph Shelton. I'm the director of the Hunterian Museum. I'm the recipient, in a sense, of the plaque. I'm a bit like Alice, I have to confess. I'm an art historian. My physics were not my particular strong point, but coming to Glasgow 2 years ago, it feels like coming to Kelvin land, because I work in Kelvin Hall and I walk along the River Kelvin, through Kelvin Grove Park, past Kelvin Grove Museum, etc., etc. You can't miss the importance, I think, of Kelvin and how he's valued here at the University of Glasgow. We're surrounded here upstairs. There's a very large section of instruments that you will see from Lord Kelvin, and there's distributed other materials from his practice, amongst others the clock in the house that he worked at here at Professor Square number 11. So he is really one of the giants, I think, of the history of science at the University of Glasgow. So to recognize him for one of his particular achievements as being part of this, well, I must say, most eminent committee of great names in the history of physics, I think that's great. It's fitting. And one of the lucky coincidences, actually, that recently happened was we actually have this at the university. I'm going to show it. This is, as it's officially described in our collections catalogue, it's the determination of the Ohm apparatus. In 1861, the British Association and the Royal Society of London jointly appointed a committee with Kelvin as chairman to recommend a standard unit of electric resistance. Well, you've all heard that. Big names: Thomson, William, Wheatstone, Miller, Matthiessen, Fleming-Jenkin, and they were to report on the subject. And in the following year, additional members were appointed: Clerk Maxwell, Seaman, Balfour, Stewart, Jules, Varley. I mean, big names in the history of science, and later even more. And they proposed to base the unit on a meter and second, as in Weber's electromagnetic system. And then Thomson and Fleming-Jenkin, they used this particular apparatus in an attempt to actually measure the unit. Now, this determination of the Ohm apparatus was always in the common room in the Physics and Astronomy department in Kelvin building. What else? But because of the refurbishment of that particular common room, the apparatus became available. And actually what we are going to do is that we're going to put that in the big showcase that you see up the stem that now contains the pitchfork, the tuning fork. We're going to replace that with this determination of the Ohm apparatus, and we will include the plaque in the showcase with it, so it's contextualized in a way. And we're very grateful to our colleagues of the Physics and Astronomy department for allowing us to use that apparatus. I think that is probably about enough for me to say, indeed, except for thanking the IEEE, its president, its members, historical committee, Peter and colleagues for taking this initiative, and we're very grateful, and we're going to very proudly have this on display in the somewhere in the next few weeks. So thank you very much, and I'll invite you all to come upstairs to unveil the plaque. Thank you. Mr. President, Dr. Hinchey, this is it. Camera's ready. And you can move the